Hello, and welcome to the North Carolina Museum of History and the 26th Annual American Indian Heritage Celebration. The presentation will begin in just a moment, but we want to begin with a few notes. Remember to ask questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to respond to them and share with our presenter or panel. We have many additional resources about American Indians in North Carolina on our website. We would like to thank the following sponsors of the North Carolina Museum of History Foundation who have helped to make this event possible.
Jessica Dingle, a member of the Waccamaw Siouan tribe, creates authentic Indian-made art in painting and jewelry design. Jessica, welcome. What are you sharing with us today?
Today I'm going to be sharing with you some beadwork techniques and some paintings that I've done over the year.
Yes, so how did you first learn to paint, and what materials do you use to create your works?
Well, I think we are all born with the innate sense of creating, and it's whether we choose to nurture that creative spark or not. And luckily, I had parents that were very supportive in that. And I would say, like, if anybody, wants to learn how to paint, you just get some paint and like start pushing it around. That's what I tell people. Like, if you want to paint, paint. And what I use is, it depends on the size. Like I paint the centerpieces for my beadwork, which is on wood. So in this is acrylic paint here. That's what that is. And then for something larger, like this one, this is oil paint. And let's see. And this one back here too. This one is oil. So I use a mix of, well, obviously not together, but separately I use both mediums of oil and acrylic.
What are the main sources of inspiration for your work?
Well, the first inspiration would be culture and background, as being an indigenous, a lot of the inspiration comes from that. I'm inspired by nature, my kids, and the art. I like to create a feeling. I like to elicit emotion in the person that's viewing it. So everyone has an individual experience. I like to compare my art to food, which is something that's relatable to everybody. And the way I make that connection is, you can serve 10 people the same dish, and then each person will take something different from that. And you never know what it is. And that's what I like about it. I just create the piece, and sometimes, I'll create something and I'll ask my son, what do you think of this? How do you like this? And he'll point out something that's in there that I didn't even see. So I like that.
You brought a lot of paintings with you today. Can you talk about the different motifs or symbols or patterns and colors that you used in some of the paintings that you brought with you?
Sure, absolutely. This piece right here, this is an oil piece. And what you see here is like an abstraction of a feather design. And you can see that right here. And then these right here are representative of jingles. This is like a snapshot of what you would see in the powwow arena. You'll see a lot of feathers, you'll see a lot of jingles. And like here, I have these right here are representative of beads. So this piece is more or less like the experience. This is what I'm capturing here. And rarely do you see these items and they're not in movement. And that's a big thing that I like to create, in my artworks is movement. And let's see. So and so feathers are significant. It's significant to the individual person. It's significant to the different tribe, the different style of dance, and even to the individual dancer. And there's a lot of stories that can be told through the feather. Say, like, for example, if someone has eagle feathers or hawk feathers that they wear with their regalia, there is a story behind it. And everybody's story is different of how they attain that feather, how it was gifted to them. And so this is representative of like the feather, it being light, it's, you know, in the air, and it comes into the person, and then it takes on like this path, and it changes with the person. So, you know, I can give you what it means to me, but if you want to know what something means to the individual person, you have to ask them, and you'll get a different story. And here's another one. So in this one, I have this movement right here. So this one, I was thinking about a fancy shawl dancer. What you see with your shawl dancers is the fringe that's on the shawl. And so I wanted to kind of recreate that movement, you know, not to be so literal. I try not to, I mean, you can be literal with your artwork, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I like to have people look at it and question it and say, what do I see here? And that's what I see here. This is what I had in mind whenever I was going through this piece.
How has your process for creating paintings maybe changed over the years?
Oh my goodness, a lot. It's changed quite a bit. Whenever you're first learning to do beadwork, your goals are to, you always look at someone that's been doing it forever, and you want the artwork to get to this level, but it takes time, and you have to be patient with yourself. You have to learn how to hold your needle, people, you know, and how to pull the thread, and you become an expert knot picker. You learn how to pick knots out, and if you don't, a good sharp pair of scissors will fix anything.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk about some of the materials that you brought with you with your beadwork?
Sure. So what I brought were some pieces that are finished and some that are in the production stage. So whenever I first start out, it's just a wood piece, just like this right here. Just say this wasn't attached here. It's just a wood piece. I painted it. And for this pair of earrings, this is a dangle. But what you'll see a lot of are the bigger earrings that like this, that sit close to the ear. And so I'll start out with this wood piece. And the only place where glue comes in is to hold the centerpiece to the substrate. And because a lot of people ask that, how are the beads glued on? And like, no, they're not glued on, but the centerpiece is. And that's to hold that there. So we go from here, and usually I don't have a planned out design. I really like to let it come organically. And it's not a sit down and straight through process a lot of the time. Sometimes it's a lot of like, you know, try a line or two and it doesn't work and pull it out. And, you know, you can't be afraid to make mistakes and start over. So That's the second part. After it's painted, it gets glued on here. We do the beadwork around the center right here. And then from that point, I'll take some suede and put on the back. And that's not only to cover the stitches, but that you can, I don't know if you can see it there because the thread is white. But it's not only to cover the stitches, but to also protect the stitches, because as you wear the piece, you don't want this rubbing against the skin because you're going to weaken the string over time. So, and it also gives it a nice clean finish. And what I wanted to show you today, I always show the surface beading, but today I'm going to show you the edging. Let me do that.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful if you could demonstrate.
So, I already have my beading needle here. As you can see, it's very used and very warped. And that just comes from holding it and manipulating it. So I have a knot here in the end, and I'm going to find a space through here and come through the back, up through the top right here. I'm not going through both pieces. I'm going through just the top piece there, right on the edge. And everybody has their way of creating artwork. There's no right way or wrong way to do beadwork, but there are good ways and there are better ways. And that's just something that you learn with experience. And one of the things that I've learned with experience is how to hide the end of that string in there. So not only is it hidden, it's protected in there. And whenever I go through and do the edge, I'll sew right over the top of it. And much like a sewing machine would. So, and you can see these beads right here, like really tiny. So these right here are what's called size 15 beads. You see how tiny those are. And just for comparison, these right here are size 11. So I'm going to put 3 size 11. These are the same amount of beads in each color, but I just want to show you the difference in the size. It doesn't look like much, but it makes a difference. Those smaller beads let you get those really nice curves, those really sharp points. Okay, so back to the edging part. So now that I've got my 3 beads on there, I'm going to come from the back side, and I'm going to make a loop all the way around and come back up through the top again.
How long would it take you to finish this piece or a piece like that, or like the ring you're wearing?
The ring, maybe a good 3 hours. And every piece differs. It just depends on how intricate it is. And this right here is called the picot stitch. And you just keep going like you. Can you see it? Are you able to see it? Okay. And then that creates the edge here. So as you can see with this one, this is the same size beads, these 15s, these really small ones here. And whenever this piece is done, it'll have that edge on the outside. And whenever you flip it over to the back, it'll be nice and clean and finished. You don't have any edges, any strings hanging out. And it's one cohesive piece.
I see that you have toothpicks on your table as part of your working materials. I believe so, next to your jar of beads.
Oh.
And I was wondering if you could explain how you use those in your jewelry making or painting.
All right. These aren't that. That
That's
was funny.
I
I was like, oh my God, there's toothpicks. Okay. So You can use a lot of things for beading. Usually whenever I give like a presentation, I like to start the conversation with like, what is a bead? And to me, I define a bead as anything that has a hole in it that can be strung to adorn yourself, your clothing, and things of that nature. And prior to colonial contact, as indigenous people, we used what was in our environment. So that could be china berries, it could be shells, it could be antlers and things like that. And what these are actually quills. These are porcupine quills. That's what that is. And the way that these are used is, of course, they're like very sharp, and you're like, where's the hole? How am I going to use that? So we cut the ends off. And it's actually hollow.
Mm.
So if you didn't know, porcupine quills are hollow,
Mm-hmm.
and these can be used as fringe. And they can also be dyed. There are some artists that work exclusively in quills, and I have a few. I have to be careful because they are sharp,
Mm-hmm.
and not all the ends are off. Okay, and this is an example of one that's been dyed. And I leave the ends on there because sometimes, of course, whenever you're dealing with something in its natural state, they're not all uniform. So if I was doing some fringe and I wanted them to be a particular length, I'd like to set them out like this. And, I've got to observe them and be like, okay, well, this one's too skinny, so I don't want to use that one. And this one's got a bit more black on the tip here, so that might be the one that I use for the center. So there's another one there. And then you can, you can make them long like that. You can keep the black in there, or you can cut it completely off where it's just the white part showing. And they're wonderful to use for fringe. They're very lightweight. I can't go into too much detail because I just use them as accents, but there are artists that work specifically in quills, and what they do is flatten it, and they actually weave them into each other. I don't do that. I can't show you how to do that. I haven't learned that one yet, but that's what these are. I'm going to call them toothpicks from now on. That's awesome.
So we do have a really busy chat, Jessica. I can share with you some of these wonderful questions.
Sure.
Let me scroll up here. So Alyssa was asking when you made the painting that's on the top of the pile there, the one that, reflects the movement of the fancy Shaw dancers.
Mm-hmm. This one here?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
When did you make that one?
This one I think I made like late last year.
Okay. And then when you start your projects, do you draw a picture first?
No. I wish I did. I really want to be one of those artists that has it all planned out and mapped out. And for me personally, I find that it's counterintuitive to my process. I'll just sit down and start, like I tell people, just push the paint around and see what happens. And sometimes it becomes something, and sometimes it is a mess that happens. But usually, no.
Okay. Well, I think your process is working pretty well. And I
Thank
think
you.
our audience agrees as well.
Thank
And
you.
then Alyssa also wanted to ask about natural materials that you could be using to create some of these projects.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Okay.
you did share some of that with us with the quills.
Yes, the quills. And so, as I was telling you earlier, early on, my parents were always nurturing and supportive of my artistic efforts. And my father is a construction worker and he works with his hands. And his medium of choice is stainless steel. But before he started with that, he inspired me with making some jewelry of his own. And so, as far as natural materials go, this would be one of his that he made, that he gave to me. And what this is a deer antler. So, this is a small example, but that's one of the tines off of the deer. And you can cut it off. And then he takes the individual piece, you can see it right here, and like cut it in slices like that, and then drilled a hole in it. So that would be another example of a natural bead. And you can also use shells. Now these, I'm pretty sure someone put a hole in there. I didn't put them in there, but there's a hole in there from top to bottom. And then whenever they're strung together, especially if they're arranged in a fringe type nature, they make a nice little tinkling sound, like a wind chime.
And a few folks want to know where you get your quills.
Those particular ones come from eBay.
Okay.
So that's the thing about indigenous art, is even though it has its roots in the culture and natural and indigenous ways, beadwork is a representation of evolution and adaptability. Whenever you start with like shells and then antler and things like that, you use what you have in your environment. And then as you come into contact with more people, and the different goods and services that others bring with them, we as indigenous people have a tendency to adopt it and adapt it into our form of expression. And beadwork is a part of that evolution. And so a lot of times you'll see old style beadwork, like on a vest, on a regalia. And what I do is what I like to call contemporary. It's contemporary beadwork. It has its roots in tradition and culture, but I make it in such a way that, you can wear it to the office, to work. No longer is beadwork just reserved for the powwow arena or for ceremony. You can interject it into your daily life. And where that helps with indigenous people is it starts a conversation. Somebody will be wearing a pair of earrings, and if you're in North Carolina, somebody's going to know that you have some type of indigenous connection. And even if you're wearing the earrings and you're not indigenous, you're probably educated on where those earrings came from or who made them. And it takes a story with it, and it opens the door for that conversation.
And then Olivia wants to know if you're using dyes in your work. I mean, I know you're using different kinds of paints with your painting, but do you make any dyes?
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not that cool.
Okay. And it sounds like you're largely self-taught, but have you had instruction from Anyone?
Just the creator.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit more about some of the other necklaces that you brought with you? Did your father create some more of those items, or those
Oh yeah.
items that you created as well?
So he did all of these here, and let me show you one. This is one of my favorites. He's a pipe fitter by trade, and what this is his representation of a feather, and it is actually made out of stainless steel. And he shaped it and sanded it, cut the grooves in it, and I just thought that was so creative, because whenever you think about stainless steel, you don't necessarily think about jewelry. I mean, you do, but not as like a pendant or a centerpiece. And he was able to take something that you make pipes out of and make a beautiful pendant out of it. So that was inspiring to me.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about any of the jewelry on the table or any of your other materials?
Does anybody else want to know anything?
Well, I think the final question is, how do we buy your work? I mean, are you selling any of it? Do you have a contact?
I
website?
do. I have almost all of the social medias, of course, because you got to stay with it. I have Instagram, Facebook. I even have a TikTok.
Is your username across platforms your name?
It is. Okay, on Instagram, it's One Fancy Jessie. On TikTok, it's Fancy Jessie. And on Facebook, it's also Fancy Jessie. And what I do is I'm not taking any orders right now. There's a lot of people that take orders. But right now I'm enjoying really creating what I like. And orders are fun, and they're great. They're great to do. But I'm enjoying doing my own thing and seeing how I can grow as an artist and see where it takes me.
Okay. Is that Jessie IE?
Just an eye.
Just an I. Okay. So One Fancy Jessie on Insta.
Mm-hmm.
Fancy Jessie on Facebook and TikTok.
That's right.
All righty.
I am curious about these beautiful purple works behind your jars.
Okay. All right. Okay, this is what I was working on. This is the product of this week's work. So this is in the final, well, almost final stages. Usually I work in a lot of pinks and blues and greens and oranges, and I wanted to try a limited palette. So I used the purple, the pearl shade, and like a cream colored shade. So this is in the stage where it's already been beaded. You can see the stitches there. And then this piece is ready to be cut out. So it'll be like this. And it's the same process over and over. It'll get suede on the back. I'll do the edging and then put an earring wire on it. And that'll be another pair of earrings. At least whenever it's in this stage, whenever I do them in two, I always think they're gonna be earrings, but sometimes it becomes a necklace. I intend for it to, see, this is why I don't plan out the designs, because no matter what I think it's gonna be when I start, usually it comes out something different. So I think they're still earrings, but they may become a necklace, because I'm seeing kind of like a vision with these, with like two side pieces and like some layers like hanging on it. So we'll see what these become.
Mm-hmm. Well, all of the work that you've shared with us today is absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Is there anything that you hope people will take away or learn from your demonstration today?
Yes. The takeaway would be, don't be afraid to ask questions, because people have questions, and there are and a lot of people are afraid to ask questions because they don't want to be offensive. So my only advice would be, ask the question, but always be respectful. And that's what these are. These are conversation starters. So, if you have a question, ask. And I'll try to, or whoever is wearing it or made it, or, I'll be more than happy to speak on the topic.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Jessica. Your work is absolutely beautiful. I hope the people in the chat can buy some of your work when you next release some of it across your platforms. And we hope to join us next year for our festival as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And as far as the purchasing goes, I make them and I post them. And if they're available, they'll say available. And you can shoot me a message and we'll talk about it. And you have the details.
That's awesome.
But thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the platform and being able to spread awareness about the culture and our indigenous people, and we can all, learn from each other. And this is a great way to do it. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
One last little question.
Sure.
Is it one spelled out or one as in the number one
The
in
number
Fancy
one.
Jessie?
The number
It's
one.
the number one in Fancy Jessie, y'all, if you want to find her work.
I like to think I'm a part-time comedian too. So if you find me on Facebook, it's